to some extent, civilizationally, if one talks about what civilization is, you could say that civilization is based really ultimately on one criterion apart from others on the whole. Although there is one historical civilization that didn't have this criterion. And what is that? The one thing which is the most marking factor for civilization? Yes, writing. You said it, so you must agree with me. It's writing. I mean, at least you agree. I don't know about everyone else, but because as soon as you have writing, then you assume you have civilization. If you look at how civilization arose in Iraq, very gradually from the beginning of agriculture, say from 10,000 BC until we say Sumerian civilization arises, say circa 3500 BC, well, what was special about that year? That writing made its appearance. And actually, everything else, the specialization in metalworking and pottery and the size of the cities and temples and so on, all of that was just going on gradually and had nothing to do particularly with the development of writing per se. And so we have this stereotype in our minds that civilization pops into existence out of nothing, so to speak. And that's not how it was. It's better to consider primal peoples also to be, in effect, civilized and to be in very many different levels. There's that book about the American Indians. I don't remember the author's name, but I'm sure the title is Man's Rise to Civilization. And it reveals, I guess, by its politically incorrect language that it's not really recent. But anyway, the nice thing about it was that it showed several different levels of complexity amongst the American Indian cultures. You have the Paiute Indians who were so poor that they didn't even have war, and they didn't have tribes. They only had family units because their life was so materially poor. Yet they had language that was just as complicated and developed as anyone else's language, had just as much oral vocabulary, and they undoubtedly had an extremely complicated oral poetry that was similar to that of other people, in the extent of other primal people having complicated oral poetry. And then you had ranging from that, say, to more middle-level things like the Mississippian cultures that had some connection with Mexico, but were not, the scale of the Mexicans, and that is like the Aztecs and so on. And then you had Northwest Coast Indians who didn't really have agriculture, so they were sort of between the Paiutes and the Mississippian, or like Natchez Indians and so on. So you have all of these levels that are just equally worthy of consideration to the idea of civilization. And then the exception that proves the rule among civilizations is the Incas, who had knotted cords, which they had for record keeping, which unfortunately cannot be read, although some of them survive, but they didn't have any writing, none. Every other civilization had at least some writing, whether rudimentary or developed.